The following video was sponsored by the Greek American Heritage Society of Philadelphia, preserving and promoting our community's history.
My name is Tony Vraim. I was born Antonios Ioannis Vraimopoulos. My parents started the first Greek-American funeral home in Philadelphia, which I took over when we moved to Upper Darby. Most people don't know I also had a secret life as an operative for the NSA.
Tell us about your family and their roots. Tell us about that history.
My grandparents, 3 of the 4, came from the town of Velvendo, Nomos Kozani, in Greece, and settled in the Philadelphia area. And my other grandfather came from Ioannina, which is in Epirus, and he also came to Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia area. And subsequently, my one grandmother and my grandfather, the Matziuses, moved to the and ended up living in Wildwood. My other 2 grandparents lived at 9th and Locust around the St. George. Our backyards touched with the St. George backyards.
Tell us, explain to us and share to us how the funeral home got launched, exactly where it took place and how your father launched it.
Okay. My dad was a draftsman. He worked for the Bud Company, and he was very successful with that, designed several things. The Vista car on the trains that with the panoramic window was one of my father's designs back when. But he always wanted to be a doctor. So he got together with, at that time, there were 4 Greek doctors and 1 Armenian doctor in the city, taking care of our population. Well, anyway, he got them together to ask them to give him some recommendations for college so he could become a doctor. And the Armenian doctor said to him, "Johnny, look, there's 5 of us. We don't have that big of a population. What we don't have is a funeral director." Well, that was it. Dad became the first Greek-American funeral director in Philadelphia.
Tell us a little bit about how your family eventually moved here with the funeral home to Upper Darby.
Eventually, after being for several years at 53rd and Locust in West Philadelphia, with the neighborhood change and the population drifting, and of course with the large influx of Greek immigrants into Upper Darby back then, in 1964, he built and opened the funeral home here on State Road.
Well, tell us how he came about to pick this location.
Originally he wanted to build in Millbourne, where he had a building which he thought he could convert. But then this one came up for sale, and even though we were living in a private home over on Beverly Boulevard at the time, he decided to liquidate all his other properties and invest everything here in this property. And we've been here ever since.
So how old were you when you started to get into the funeral? I mean, did you grow up actually in the parlor, in the funeral parlor?
Yes.
Seeing it your whole life?
Yes. We moved into the funeral home at 53rd and Locust when I was 5 years old, and 1950. And no, I'm sorry. Yeah, we moved there in 1950, and we lived there. Then in 1960, when we came to Upper Darby, we actually moved into that little house on Beverly Boulevard. But then when Dad sold that, we moved back in here, back into the funeral home again in 1964, and I stayed here until I was married.
Okay, you've given me the dates. Give me an experience. What was it like for you as a child knowing that your father was a funeral director, that wasn't a very well-known position in the community. What was that like for you? What did you see? How did you feel?
Really, I was no different than anybody else because everybody takes the stereotypical outlook of funeral homes that they see in the movies. Actually, we are very instrumental in helping people through a really lousy time. And my dad was well known because of what he did, and he was sincere in what he did, which he passed on to me. And we always had a cardinal rule here: never be a phony. Always be yourself and be honest with people, and just do what you can to help them over a miserable time. Now, we know we're going to get a lot of flack. We're going to get blamed for everything that happens. But as long as we can conclude our business and be able to talk to people afterwards and hear, thanks, you helped, that's what it's all about. And that's how I always grew up.
Now, since you said growing up, let's talk about that a little bit. You're a product of the Upper Darby area, the Greek community here.
Yes.
What was it like in that time frame, I guess the 60s primarily?
Yes.
Growing up in this area, what was the Greek community like?
Very close, very accommodating. We all stuck together. We socialized together. I was very involved with the church. I was in the choir, Sunday school, of course, the Boy Scouts, Troop 302, the Sons of Pericles, all of the goings on I was part of and enjoyed it very much, and made many, many friends to which I still have today.
Beverly Hills and Upper Darby.
Yes.
And your other education, Temple. Let's talk about your education being part of this area. What was that like? Upper Darby was a wonderful area, and it was an interesting time in your life. Tell us about growing up and being part of this community in general.
It was great, and I had more of a mix in the community than a lot of people, in that we were the only Greek funeral home, and the Greek community supported us, but then we supported them. But in so doing, we got to meet almost everybody eventually because of the family interaction with the funeral home. A lot of people didn't have that interaction that we did. So we not only saw people in church, we saw them in activities, but we also saw them here through our work. And we built great relationships because of that.
Tell us about how you actually became interested in taking over the family business.
I really didn't like the family business from the very beginning. Having been born and raised in a funeral home, it was okay, but there's a big world out there, and there were a lot of things I really wanted to do. But God bless my dad. He told me I could do anything I wanted to do after I became a funeral director. So that's how my first thing was to get my funeral director's license and then consider doing something else. Well, once I got my license, I wasn't going anywhere. However, that's when I got involved with the NSA.
Okay, let's talk about education, your love of music, and the fact that you were able to master languages. Tell us a little bit about all this.
Okay. In my education, after high school, I went to Temple University. I was very interested in music and studied some music when I was there. And I also was able to pick up languages very quickly. I personally think it was a background from the languages, from music, but I'm not sure. But in any event, I was fluent in Greek, and...
That's one language.
Oh, okay. Well, I had several. I think there were 5 or 6 of them at this time. I was never really truly a master of all of them, but I had a working knowledge, and I could understand and get the influence of what was going on around me. And I credit this to dealing with all the different nationalities that we dealt with here at the funeral home, because we dealt with all these different ethnic backgrounds.
Well, tell us a little bit more then. When you graduated, Temple, what area did you graduate and where did you do?
Okay, I graduated as a chemist, but then because of my dad, had to go to embalming school, which I did in New York City. And at the time, I lived on the 5th floor, walk up over a Chinese funeral home. And it was there that it was during Nam, and I wanted to participate in one way or another. And I was hoping that at the end of my funeral education, I could join the submarine service. Well, I tried, and I was thrown out because I had ulcers. When I was thrown out, I was recruited on the dock by an NSA person asking me if I wanted to join the NSA. And in asking, I said, yeah, why? And he said, well, you have an interest in the maritime and you speak several languages. Well, they got me through the Merchant Marine Academy. I became a captain in the Merchant Marine, and then I became an operator for them in different countries.
What year was this when this all took place?
This was I started in the 70s.
In the 70s.
Yeah.
You were still holding two jobs. You were still here.
I was still here, but I would only go with them for maybe a 2 or 3 week period and then come back.
All right, let's get to the big questions. You're going to have to share a little bit more. What was it like? Where did you go, and what did they have you do?
I started off first going down into South America, into Nicaragua, Panama, Salvador, and I would go off up into the mountain regions to deal with the locals there. And at that time, it was just sitting around and listening and informing our troops what was going on with the locals.
Did that change for you?
It changed my outlook on things, yes, because I got a better understanding of what the locals thought and what we thought and what was told to us. Yeah, it was a very enlightening situation.
Was there ever a point where you felt that somebody had found out about who you are and what you really do?
No, not really, because as I said, I just listened and just came back and talked to people. It's not like it was a covert spy operation. I was just a fly on the wall. So consequently, it was very easy not to mention that part of it, but just to go on as I was a captain in the Merchant Marine taking military supplies back and forth to war zones.
So let me get this straight. You were, at the same time, a captain in the Merchant Marine, you ran the funeral home, and you were sent into South America to observe the community, the general public, to see where things were going politically. And you managed all this?
No, in the very, very beginning, my dad and I were working together here. So I was able to take off longer periods of time to go into South America and into the villages. Later, I would only take maybe a week and take a ship across or go into a country, fly in or whatever, and just go in as a Merchant Marine captain. But I didn't have to spend a lot of time there. That's when I was running the funeral home. And I had a manager, which helped me, and we weren't as busy as we are now, so consequently I was able to juggle it, and it worked well.
Well, let's get to the other part of your life then. You have a wife.
Yes.
Did she know what you did?
No.
She had no clue all these years?
No. She knew I was sailing somewhere. She knew I was a captain, but she didn't know anything at all about the other because I was not able to tell anybody. And I never told anybody because of that.
And you managed to keep silent about it for how many years?
30.
30 years.
Yes.
And now 30 years later, you've started to reveal a little bit.
I can reveal a little bit of what happened back then now, but I can't get into any kind of a specific because of the nature of what was happening.
Tell me then let's go then a little bit further into your affairs in South America, where you were stationed primarily. What were you finding? And you did share the fact with me earlier that you did develop an interesting relationship with, someone that represented the other side of the faction, the Cold War faction from the 60s.
Sure. When we were there were several names for all the different organizations. Basically, it was the communists versus us, or the communists versus the indigenous political systems. However, the United States would be backing them. So consequently, we would have Soviet agents, we would have Cuban agents, we would have independents, all operating at the same time versus the American and our allies. Well, as it turned out, I got very chummy with one of my Soviet counterpart. He was a young fellow just like me, just married, had a young daughter, and we hit it off, and we were very honest with each other. And it wasn't the type of thing where we had to really worry, because we weren't divulging any totally important information. We were just talking about troop movements back and forth, and we would just drop hints about, hey, get out of town tonight, our guys are coming through. And that would go back and forth. And we kept up. Unfortunately, he passed away several years ago, but we kept in communication for several years. And his name was Anatoly, and I'm Andonios. So
that's interesting, the fact that you kept a relationship after you both had departed from the NSA. You kept in contact to some extent?
Yes, we did.
Through photographs, through phone calls, through
just
mail?
Just mail, yeah. I would send his daughter a CD every once in a while.
Oh,
yeah, but as I said, we weren't political. We were very faithful to our side, both of us.
Right.
And as I said, nothing very severe ever was thing. We were just two guys that happened to be stuck in the middle of a jungle that could talk to each other.
Was there ever a time you felt threatened or that you were in a sticky situation?
Only once, but I always had a bodyguard with me, and the bodyguard took care of the threat, and it went away.
It went away.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Now, how long ago did you retire from the NSA and the Merchant Marines?
When I had my heart attack 7 years ago.
7 years ago.
Yes.
And now you're living in the New Jersey.
I'm living in Atlantic City.
You're living in Atlantic.
Since I had the heart attack and had to stop work,
right.
I let my boys take over the funeral business, and I can't sail anymore.
Okay. Let's go back. Let's review that a little bit. You were direct. So you were still a Merchant Marine with the NSA, and you were back and forth running the funeral home. You had some help.
Yes.
And you did that up until what year? Approximately. Into the middle 90s?
Yeah, late
Let's
90s.
say to the late 90s.
Late 90s, yes.
So after the late 90s, did the boys go through the same process that you did?
Yes, they went. They both graduated Upper Darby. My eldest went to Shippensburg. My youngest went to Pitt.
Right.
And both of them, on their own, decided they wanted to be funeral directors.
So they took over the business eventually.
Eventually, when I had my heart attack, they took over.
They took over. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about the Vraim Funeral Home today. Then, where is it today in the Greek community? It's still a presence. and the sons run it. Are you involved with it at all?
No,
You're,
I am
you're
not.
completely
I am
retired.
completely out of it. I have to be. The joke was if I stayed, my doctors told me if I stayed working, I'd be my own customer in a year. And it's because of the nerves. We take our work very seriously. And it's not like you're just handling a body and this. We're handling somebody's loved one. And we have to make sure that whatever they want, we can do for them the way they want it. It's very nervous. And the fact that a lot of people, most people, know us directly, we have to make sure it's absolutely perfect for them. It's not just like we're going through the hoops. So consequently, it's not only the fact that we know the people that we're dealing with, but the fact that we have to get it perfect for them. It's the nervous tension that builds up. So consequently, I had to stop completely.
Right. Tell us about this tattoo on your left arm.
Well, this tattoo was given to me by my crew. And when I made captain on the first time out, it's a merchant marine tattoo. It's the compass rose, which signifies direction where we don't really know where we're going next. We can be anywhere. Then it's the anchor, but it's fouled. It has a rope around it, which means it's not working correctly. And that signifies how often things go wrong. The laurel around the bottom here is for all the people that drowned before we did.
Do you miss the NSA or the Merchant Marines?
I miss it all.
You miss it all.
I miss it all. I miss the going into different countries and assimilating with the people and talking and just seeing what they're doing. And of course, being out on the ocean, that's, what can you say about that? That's the best part. But the best part of everything was coming home to my family and to the U.S. That was the best thing ever.
So before we wrap it up, I'm curious, now you're how old?
I'm 73.
What do you do with your time now? What do you occupy yourself with to stay busy?
I have a boat, obviously. I'm involved with theater. I am the founder of the Brigantine Lighthouse Players, which is a theater group in Brigantine, New Jersey, and we put on full-scale productions. I'm involved with the Atlantic City government in that I'm on their zoning board. And it seems like I have more to do now than I ever had when I was working.
Tony Vraim, thank you for speaking with us today at Cosmos Philly.
I want to thank Cosmos Philly and the Greek American Heritage Society for the opportunity and this interview.
For more information about sponsoring or viewing the interview series, visit the Greek American Heritage Society of Philadelphia online at gahsp.org.